I am going to hand over to Jeanette. Jeanette is an autism employment advocate, a writer and a speaker, and a very good speaker at that as well. I'm going to invite her up here and hand over to her, and then we will hear from some other speakers following Jeanette. So Jeanette, over to you.
Excellent. Hello everyone. Can you all hear me? I haven't got much voice at the moment, so I've been sucking on strepsils and doing the impossible task of not talking. It's very hard. Anyway, I'm going to talk to you today about autism and employment from a lived experience perspective. I'm going to talk a little bit about my life story because I think it is relevant for employers to see the kinds of journeys that autistic job seekers and employees can take. I'm also going to talk about sort of some of the positives of employing autistic people and why it makes good business sense to employ autistic people. And then I'm also going to discuss some of the kinds of challenges that can come up and some nifty solutions. I am somebody who never raises a problem without suggesting a solution. So about me, this presentation actually, I should say, is mostly images. So my talk, I've got my talk here, it's on these bits of paper. But I just thought I didn't want to kill you with PowerPoint. So we won't be focusing on the dot points there. We're focusing what I'm saying and looking at these lovely prompting images. So the first couple of slides is about what I'm doing now, about my life. So I am a public servant. I've been a 10.5-year veteran of the public service. I'm an autism advocate. I'm an author. I have 3 books. In November, I'll have 4 published books, which is very cool. And I love public speaking. So the images of me here, on the left-hand side, you've got me talking to a room full of psychiatrists and paediatricians in Melbourne earlier this year. Up the top, you've got me receiving an award for ACT Volunteer of the Year last year, yay. And down the bottom, you might recognise a couple of the people on that slide. We've got Andrew, as CEO of the CRC, that's lots of C's, Tori, who is on the panel today and is a great friend and colleague, me, and you might not recognise the lady on the other side, that's independent member for Indi, Kathy McGowan, because we were at Parliament House, so that was fun. So I spend a lot of time within the autism community. I talk about my non-work work. So I have a paid role, which is full-time, and then I have my non-work work, which is this stuff, autism advocacy, speaking, all of those things. And I absolutely love it. I do a lot of mentoring. We're talking about mentoring this morning. Mentoring and coaching are really important for autistic people and for everyone. I'm an ambassador for a number of autism organisations, including Specialist Owner, who we heard from a bit today, who started the Dandelion program, and the CRC, and then a couple of the autistic-run ones, the ICANN Network and Yellow Ladybugs. So I do a lot of ambassador things. Almost everything I do is voluntary, so very few things I do have a cash amount, but that's okay because this is my passion. This is what I love. If you have autistic friends or relatives, then you will know that we have a passion and interest. We have something, a driving force. For young kids, it might be Minecraft. For me, it's autism advocacy. So I would do this all day, every day if I could. And I do win quite a few awards. In fact, I found out yesterday I'm a finalist at another one, the New South Wales and ACT Community Awards. Fair enough. So that'll be fun. I like these things. This slide's lovely. The one at the top there is me speaking at TEDx Canberra. Now, Jeff Anger, who came up and spoke earlier today, was actually shared the TEDx stage with me on that day. So that was really nice. Of course, I have face blindness. I've completely forgotten who the poor fellow was. It was all good, though. Down the bottom there is my lovely former manager, Julie, who retired last year, and we're signing, or she's witnessing I'm signing an author contract. And that on the right-hand side is my workstation at home. That's Whimsy Manor, my lovely home. I like bright colours, as you'll see. So my own education to work journey is something I will start with because I guess that's quite pertinent. And the word journey is deliberately chosen. So we have this idea with employment that someone will go from school to further education to graduate job to corner office. That's what you do, isn't it? That's the trajectory. Well, most people don't do that. Most autistic people definitely don't do that. My journey has been a journey. So I was a very high achiever at school. I was really well respected by the teachers. I got to do all sorts of exciting stuff. I was top of every year. I was stuck to the school. Everyone told me I could do any university degree that I put my mind to. I could have any job I wanted. The problem is, though, that I was bullied a lot when I was at school and victimised by people who, I don't know that they meant to do what they did, but they made my life very difficult and they made my self-esteem very difficult. So I became really negatively focused. So despite having all these, on paper, attributes of positivity, in reality I just wanted to be miserable. So I got my first job, which was in a fast food restaurant, which was horrible and I hated. I was a reluctant student, so I thought I had to go to university because that's what people had said. I didn't want to be there. And this all precipitated a very dark time in my life, which I don't talk about in great detail. I have an autobiography. If you want to read about Jeanette doing terrible things and making poor choices, that's the place for it. But and it is okay to laugh. It's all good. I tell jokes. I'm not going to be offended if you laugh. So that was 5 years of my life where I don't remember much, and it really was not nice. Then when I got to be 26, I re-engaged with the community. I re-engaged with society, and I wanted to be ordinary. And that sounds awful, doesn't it? But for me, ordinary meant to be gainfully employed in a professional job, to have a university education, a mortgage, and preferably a suit. Now, I'll give you a spoiler. Within 8 years, I had all of those things, coming from being unemployed for many, many years, being not educated, being homeless at times, all of these things. And I got from that place to a very positive place. And I do have these lovely images that I put in my slides. These are memes that I put on social media every single day. So I've been doing a different one mostly since 2014. I have quite a few of them. And this one says, success is not about reaching some arbitrary goal. It's about reaching your potential, whatever that may be. So when we're talking about autism employment, it's not success, it's potential and fulfilment. So my own journey to a public service role, and it was a very, very winding sort of setbacky journey. So I couldn't work. I found out I couldn't work because I got so anxious from a restaurant job that I ended up in hospital with mental health issues. Oh, I didn't know it did that. I didn't put that in there. Sorry, PowerPoint's misbehaving. But yes, so I couldn't work at all. But I never thought I can't work at all. When I had a setback, I didn't think I will never work again. I thought, I can't work at this moment in time, but I will in the future. So I set on this incremental journey to build my confidence. And so I had a volunteer role, did all these slightly incrementally more challenging things around employment until I got to the point that I could apply for a professional role. I applied for 2 graduate roles in the public service, one in Melbourne, one in Canberra. I had an employment service provider back then. They were worse than useless, sadly. They thought that autistic people would be stressed out by getting a job. And I'm like, so they didn't give you any support. It's just like therapy or something. I'm like, you're an employment service. I want a job. Very difficult stuff. They got paid for not giving me a job. Anyway, I applied for my graduate jobs and lots of people told me just exactly why and how I wouldn't be able to do it. And I did have some significant barriers to professional employment. I had a criminal history, I have a serious mental illness, I'm autistic, I was very poor at the time, I was living in supported housing, I hadn't worked in years. However, somehow through my achievements at that point, having written a publicly published book and having done lots of experience to build my confidence, I found myself employed in the Commonwealth Public Service in February 2007. So, yes, that's me giving a talk at the Disability Employment Australia conference, and I was actually speaking on behalf of the Australian Public Service at that event. And I found shortly after joining the public service how much I loved it. I felt like I'd come home. I felt like I'd died and gone to work heaven. It was the best thing in the world. My advocacy roles outside of the workforce actually translated into skills at work, which was fantastic. I had all sorts of different roles. I've worked in about 6 areas. So I worked in communications, policy, strategic policy, coordination, risk, and I'm now working in HR and human resources. So it's just wonderful. And I do tend to think of it as my dream job. I was very lucky. I did the right thing by applying for that one. So what does my role give me? And yes, that's me at work looking dreadfully important. So my role gives me financial independence and security. And of course, that's the main point of a job, is so you get paid. Most people wouldn't do it if you didn't get paid for it. I wouldn't do it for the love of it. So financial independence and salary is very important. Social contact. Now, I'm not particularly introverted, as you may have guessed, particularly who's spoken to me in the breaks or anything. I'm quite an extrovert, but I still don't like a lot of social contact, and I do sort of keep away from that. So going to work is good because it keeps me in the swing of communicating with humans. It's a positive social role. If you've ever been unemployed and someone says to you, "So what do you do?" How do you reckon you feel when someone asks that question? It's not good, is it? I didn't used to like that. I felt very uncomfortable. Someone asked me what I do now. I say I work in the public service. Not that that's right, not that people should be discriminated against for being unemployed, but it is a socially valued role to do what I do, which is lovely. I get the opportunity to do leadership work around disability in the workforce, which is fantastic too. It gives me a level of credibility. If I hadn't been working in the public service for 10 and a half years and I was standing up to you now, I wouldn't have the level of credibility, would I? Because I wouldn't know much about employment, maybe. So that's a really interesting thing, and it doesn't mean that people who haven't been employed have nothing to say. But when I speak in these forums about employment, the fact that I do a lot of employment stuff and have to think around the issues and things makes it more relevant. And it gives me a sense of pride and self-worth. I mean, coming from where I came from to where I am now, that level of engagement in society when I was completely disengaged in the past, that is a lovely thing. That makes me very happy. So I've got another point in this slide, which is what makes my workplace work for me. Now, a lot of autistic people join the workforce and it's a poor fit, or they have a bad experience with a manager, or it's just not for them, and it becomes something really negative in their life, and work becomes a lot more stressful than it should be. For me, I have the opposite of that in my current role. So when we talk about autism, a lot of people talk about an assumption of incompetence, the idea that you think an autistic person can't do that, so you don't give them the job. I have the opposite of that, which is the ideal. I have an assumption of competence. So an example of that, I'm autistic. We're not supposed to be very good at human stuff, emotional intelligence, people skills. I work in the human resources area, and recently I was assigned the role of ESO coordinator. Now, what ESO stands for is Employee Support Officer. That's people that deal with, that manage complaints of bullying and harassment in the workforce, and I coordinate the team of people that do that. That is not a job that if you were going on stereotypes about Autism 101, you would give an autistic person. But in my workplace, my managers know that I am very good on people skills and emotional intelligence. So I do that job, and apparently I'm very good at it. I get a lot of good praise. I am supported to do my job. I'm not undermined, I'm supported. Differences are not focused on entirely. So it's not, oh, you're autistic, and then ask about 400 questions about that. When I'm at work, I'm working. And autism is not seen in terms of stereotypes in my workplace. It's lovely. I get lots of reassurance and positive feedback when I do a good job. I don't really do a bad job ever, but I'm sure if I did, someone would talk to me about it in a very supportive way. And I'm supported to take on stretching work. So one thing we did recently, we had interviews for the graduate program for the department for next year. And I'd never done interviews, and I put my hand up for it because I've always wanted to. And I thought, they won't find a spot for me there. It's too much. What if I'm terrible at it? And I did it, and actually I was outstanding at it, and they said, we'll have you next year. And that was stretching work. It was something I'd never done before, and it was lovely to get that opportunity. So that's enough about me, although that is a picture of me. We're moving on to autism and employers. So that's actually me at my workplace doing a presentation. I think it's the year before last. So what is autism? What are we talking about? Well, it's a neurological difference. The main impact that you guys as employers would find around autism is a difference in social communication. That would be the one thing I would say in the workplace is the key difference. Difference social communication in a different sort of way. Autism affects women and men, boys and girls. You don't stop being autistic when you turn 18. Autism is as varied as there are autistic people. It's like being human. All humans are different. All autistic people are different. We share a lot of similarities at times, but that's as far as it goes. And it's not curable. And if you talk to any autistic adult, or most of us, we will say it shouldn't be curable. It's not a disease. It's part of who we are. It's an integral part of our character. So to say most autistic people will not say, I wish I wasn't autistic. That's an important point to remember. And many innovators, creatives and scientists are or were autistic. If you want your outside-of-the-box thinkers, pick us. Oh, I didn't read those memes, but I'm sure you had a good look at them. So autism is not necessarily a deficit, it's more of a difference. And there are challenges, there are difficulties, but sometimes these aren't intrinsically due to autism, but are due to a mismatch in communication and understanding. So if you address that mismatch, you're going to address that issue. The autistic community, so we talked a bit about neurodiversity today. What is that? Neurodiversity is the concept of different, not less, basically, when it boils down to, I think that was Temple Grandin who came up with that one the first time. Different, not less. So we're not actually, we don't need sort of, mollycoddling. We need being treated in a way that enables us to do our best. And neurodiversity is about respect and about community and the idea of autism as a culture. So that's a quick little introduction to neurodiversity. Autistic people can and do work. One of the issues you get is that people can't get a job, or they can't get a job that's suited to their skills, abilities and wants. So it's not that we can't work. The reason that we have employability problems is not our own levels of skills or employability. There's a bunch of barriers out there which people were talking about this morning: recruitment processes, communication, performance management. Autistic people don't always understand what's expected of them at work, even if they can get there in the first place. And so many people go through multitudinous job interviews and just do not go through that model. And what does the job interview teach us? It teaches us the same as the exam teaches us. Someone who's good at exams will do well at exams. Someone who's good at job interviews will do well at job interviews. It does not mean that a person who's bad at job interviews is not employable. We do need to rethink this stuff. And we have an appallingly low participation rate, talking about 40%, which is a slight upgrade from the 2012 figure, which was 34%. And of course, participation is not, the statistic does not mean people employed full time. It's the New Start population, people actively seeking work, and people who are underemployed, so anyone employed 1 hour or more per week. So I don't know if anyone's broken down that 40% into hours worked, but I don't reckon people like me who are full-time professional employees, I don't think we're the majority by any sense of the imagination. So we need to change that. That's an issue. So why employ autistics? I love this. I always use that image. I love it so much. So don't think about what you can't do, reflect about what you can. And that comes from employers in employing autistic people. So why should you employ autistic people? What's my pitch? Well, we have a number of really handy skills. Some of the things we can do can actually complement the skills of your staff. Now, just think about personality testing, Myers-Briggs. I'm a very rare Myers-Briggs type for autistic people. I'm an ESTJ. Years in the past, you used to think if your whole team was made up of ESTJs, that'd be a good thing. We don't think that now, do we? Because the team has different functions. You need different people in the team to do different things. So you need someone like me, and you need other types too. So that works with neurodiversity as well. Autistic staff member can actually complement the functioning of your team and your capacity in a really good way. We see things differently, and we spot potential issues and threats emerging that other people won't notice. It doesn't necessarily require a large expenditure or effort to accommodate autistic employees. In fact, even if you do require workplace modifications, the government's job access website, you can go through that and get, I think, up to $3,000 or $4,000 worth of support in workplace modifications for staff with disabilities. So even if there is a cost, that will be offset by some of those schemes that exist. One thing about all employees with disability generally, and autistic employees, is lower unplanned absences. We take less sick leave. Why is that? Well, I have a mental illness, and I use this as my example. In the past, I've had to take months off work at a time. I'm not going to take sick days unless I absolutely need to, because I don't know when I'm going to need a lot of sick leave. So unless I'm, if I'm contagious, I'll stay home. But otherwise, I do go to work and I manage a lot of difficulty that other people probably wouldn't. So that can be a really, really useful thing. Lower rates of attrition. I have worked in the public service for 10.5 years. That is not unusual for autistic employees who find a fit with their job. We're not going to dash off out the door taking the next best opportunity. We will be loyal because a number of reasons. We tend to be loyal anyway. It tends to be a sort of autistic personality trait. But also, if we've struggled to get a meaningful job, we're not going to let that go very easily. And we do have the innovation and the out-of-the-box thinking, which is always good. So what do autistic staff bring to your workplace? So I've got a dot point slide here. Attention to detail. I know that's a cliche, but it's true. And I'm not good at coding or IT or anything like that. I'm very good with writing because I'm an author and I can proofread really nicely. If the strategy needs to be proofread, give it to Jeanette, she'll pick out all the errors. Enthusiasm and loyalty. I love my job. I love my job as much as I loved my job 10 years ago. Most employees aren't that excited about their job, sadly. Honesty. Now, we don't do this through choice. This is how we are. We are hardwired to be honest. We don't work on more than one level. Doesn't mean we can't, but generally we prefer not to because it's very stressful. So you're not going to get your autistic staff member diddling the books. Well, hopefully. Of course, everyone's an individual, but hopefully not dodgy people. We don't want that. Work ethic, you know, and if someone doesn't have this already, it's very easy to teach as a logical lesson. The company does better if the staff are working harder so you can keep your job. Work ethic. Pride in your work. I can't remember who said this, but one of the speakers this morning was talking about autistic employees as having great pride in their work and valuing what we do. I discovered 2 years ago when I was 41 that it was possible not to give 100% to what you're doing, and I didn't like that at all, so I've never taken it up. You know, it's not something I want. It's really, and that most employees, once again, are not going to be like that. Innovative thinking and promoting diversity. Now, I've got my HR hat on all the time. What is the point of workplace diversity? It's not about warm and fuzzies. If there are warm and fuzzies, that's fantastic, but the value of workplace diversity is your bottom line as an employer, because if you've got a cohesive team who work together where there is no bullying, no discrimination, where everyone respects each other, that will really improve productivity and will improve your profit margin. If you've got a team, conversely, where everyone's miserable and there is bullying and there's a lack of respect and diversity isn't treated well, you have the opposite thing. The productivity dips and really difficult to keep going. So that's important, really important to be aware of that as well. And there's a little meme now which says autistic people can be excellent employees, dedicated, enthusiastic and aware of important details that others may miss. So what do employers need to provide in the workplace? I've got this slide. It's a bit of a stark one, isn't it? It says you can be as job-ready, qualified or skilled as you like, but employers need to want to employ autistic job seekers as well. You can't get a job if no one's offering a job. So what do employers need to do? And it's surprisingly simple in most cases. Information. Autistic people, if we don't know something, we can really worry about it, so be prepared to give information. Support. Now, this doesn't have to be a large effort. One of the ways my boss supports me is when I do a piece of work, I submit it to her, she says, "Thank you, Jeanette, good job." That takes, 3 seconds? And that makes all the difference. Training and career progression opportunities. So I'm very proud of myself because last Wednesday I submitted an application for a promotion at work. I've been promoted twice while being in the workforce, which is a lot of people don't experience. And I think one of the issues autistic people get is they find themselves in work and then it's almost like the employer can think they've done them a favour by employing them. And, oh, well, I don't need to give you training. You don't have to apply for a promotion. Already gave you a job. You get the same thing with mature age employees, that people don't want to give them a promotion opportunity, even though a younger employee might get promoted and leave the next day. You know, these kinds of things can be really difficult, but we have as much right, and it's going to help your business as well, to give us relevant training and career progression opportunities. And a safe and respectful workplace. And of course, the interesting thing about these qualities and activities is that if you do this for autistic employees, you can view the autistic employee as the canary in the mine. So when you do these things, the rest of your staff will benefit. So this is not just being nice and warm and fuzzy to the people with autism. This is actually about increasing the cohesion in your team and the job satisfaction and enthusiasm of your workforce. So I've got some slides here which are just looking at specific issues which can occur for autistic employees. We'll just go through those and what they may be, and then just some quick fixes that might work really easily and really well. So the first one is sensory difficulties, which a few people touched upon today. So I'll give you an example actually, because if you don't experience them, it's hard to know just from saying sensory difficulties. So I didn't know I had this one until a couple of weeks ago. I went to a business breakfast with some of the Canberra TEDx Disability Leaders Institute, all of those people. And so having breakfast, it was early in the morning, and two of the colleagues ordered an omelette with black truffle on it. Now, I don't like mushrooms, so I've never really tried black truffle. Well, the waitress grated it on their omelette. I had to move halfway down the restaurant and not talk to anyone because the smell was so overwhelming. It was inside me. I had flashbacks of the smell for a week afterwards. That's a sensory issue. So when an employee says, gee, it's really loud, or gee, those lights are really blinding my eyes, they're not exaggerating, they're probably actually downplaying it. So sensory difficulties can result in people's productivity dropping or people leaving the workforce. Actually don't know, I can't do that anymore. So it's actually usually relatively easy to fix. So removing or mitigating the cause, if someone has issues with the fluorescent lights, take them out, give them a lamp, their workstation, and encourage the employee to raise issues with any other sensory things that come up, because sometimes autistic people, we don't realise we can say something, and so we suffer in silence. We don't need to. Interpersonal issues, specifically perceived rudeness. So autistic people, we sometimes get wrongfully accused of being rude because we're very blunt or because we say something that might be a bit unexpected. Almost always, this is unintentional. This is not people who want to be rude at all, and if you tell them, they'll be horrified. But of course, rudeness or perceived rudeness in the workplace can be really dangerous because it can lead to a lot of interpersonal issues. So explaining the impact of the behaviour and the comment that they said to the autistic employee, not in a punitive, blaming way, but just saying, actually, I know you probably didn't mean it this way, but so-and-so interpreted it like that. If it's any autistic person I know, they won't do it again. We often want to be respectful and kind, and we are thoughtful, but sometimes just the communication issues can be different. Anxiety impacting on performance at work. Anxiety is one of those things that all autistic people experience, either as a high-level background anxiety or an anxiety disorder. So you can understand being anxious when you're at work is not going to be good for your productivity or your work most of the time. So ascertaining what the reason the person is anxious and the cause, and then address those if you can, working together to address issues. Some of the anxieties, one that I used to have, thankfully I don't anymore, but for years I had this. I walk down the corridor, my branch head and my director would be in the office with the door closed, and I'd think, I wouldn't think, I wonder if I've done anything wrong. I thought, what have I done? I'll lose my job, because I was so anxious about the possibility of being, sacked for doing something terrible, even though generally if you do something terrible, you remember it. But I used to do a reality check with my boss, and I just said, excuse me, I'm concerned about that. And she said, no, it's fine, Jeanette, you don't need to worry. Easy as that. Issues understanding the unwritten rules in the workplace. This is a real issue for us. I always see unwritten rules, hidden curriculum, whatever you want to call it, as like a magic trick that non-autistic people can do that just baffle me. An example was an example of an employee who didn't understand what internet usage meant when the policy said you're allowed reasonable personal internet usage. And they said, what's reasonable personal internet? What's reasonable? Is it reasonable to be on Facebook for an hour, for 5 minutes? What's reasonable? That's one of those very vague sort of rules of thumb, which we really struggle with. So giving guidance around expectations, and this may require explanation to quite a high level of detail, but that's okay. And ensuring the staff member knows that they can ask about rules they don't understand or situations that are going on. Some more issues, somebody that slacks off, so they finish their task, not really slacking off, but looks like it. They finish their task and then go on the internet. And this will probably be because, and it's a real example too, they don't know that they have to ask for another task from their boss. And so they sit there thinking, oh, I don't know what to do, feeling really uncomfortable, but they're a bit anxious to ask. So in that situation, clearly explain your expectations to the staff member, set another task, and if the employer needs to ask you for more work, then say that's okay. You don't really want someone coming into your office every day saying, give me more things to do, but it is better than them being on the internet doing nothing very useful. And literal interpretation of instructions. The one that I used to do, I don't do this either now, I've learnt not to, but I did it for years. My boss would come and say, Jeanette, can you write this paper? And so I'd do it straight away, like instantly. She'd say, Jeanette, you don't have to do it right now. It's not due until next Thursday. But with this one, it's about clarity of explanation and communication. So clearly explaining what you mean and being aware of the criteria additional to the work and letting the employee know that. So the deadline, the time frame, who needs to approve it, stuff fitting into that, that can really help. And then finally, I think it's my final one of these dot point slides, the staff member doesn't get along with colleagues. So there's a few issues going on here. Some of this might be autism related. Some of it might be interpersonal related. Autistic people aren't just autistic people. We can be difficult too from time to time. So understanding the reason for the issues, if it's worth doing some disability training for the staff members, that might help. Otherwise, being in touch with HR if it's something that needs mediating, and understanding if it's a perception or a misunderstanding or something intentional. Because if it's a misunderstanding or a perception, that's a lot easier to fix than if you genuinely have interpersonal difficulties with staff. However, once again, that is an HR issue. And the final one of these, staff member is being bullied or micromanaged. What happens if you're bullied or micromanaged? The same thing happens. You don't want to go to work. You don't associate work with anything positive. It's stressful and awful. You don't want your staff members going through that. But this is important to note. This is a bullying problem or a micromanagement problem. This is not an autism problem. If someone is being a bully, unless it's the autistic person themselves, if someone is being a bully, that is the issue that needs to be addressed. So address that issue as you would any other bullying or underperformance issue, and ensure the employee has support. And hey, I've got my HR hat on, so ensure the alleged bully has support too. So just some assistance for employees. I love this meme, it's wonderful. I can't read it from here, but it's very good. I'll let you have a look. So as I mentioned, the jobaccess.gov.au website is the government's disability employment website. It's very good. Disability Employment Services, National Disability Recruitment Coordinator, who do some work with large employers, from what I understand. The Autism CRC and Specialist Centre, which I probably don't need to show you the dot points for those. Resources. So there's a wonderful book. There's a gentleman up the front here in a purple shirt. He is one of the authors of a great book called The Hidden Curriculum of Getting and Keeping a Job. And I would recommend that strongly. It's mostly aimed at autistic job seekers and adults, but there's a lot of useful stuff for the employer in there too. There's my book, The Wonderful World of Work, which is an activity book for teens on the spectrum. It's probably not relevant for employers, but once again, it's of interest. There aren't a lot of books for employers, sadly. I think my publisher has some though, and that's their website, jkp.com. And this is just my last little affirmation slide, so it'd be nice to finish with some affirmations as an autistic employee. I'm a high-performing autistic professional employee of over 10 years standing. 15 years ago, I was completely unemployable. I'm a respected and valued staff member in my workplace. My experience as an autistic person is actually highly regarded and valued at work, and I have 2 awards from our CEO at work and 3 other awards for leadership. I'll just talk you through the images because they're lovely. The one on the left there, that's Lisa. She was our departmental secretary, so CEO. And when I wrote my employment book, and that's her in her office with my employment book, which is kind of cool. There's a meme, which once again I can't read from the little screen, and there's a typo in it. And down the bottom is lovely occasion of my mum and I at the ACT Woman of the Year Awards this year, and I was a finalist. And my mum is on the spectrum, and she worked for 40 years as an allied health professional. And, you know, it's lovely to see autistic people working and giving people the opportunity. So I hope what I've had to say, and I don't think we've got questions after me, but I will be around afterwards. I hope some of this is of value to you and helps give you some idea of why employing autistic people is actually a very good thing. So that's me done. Thank you.